So thank you, Lloyd, for
Okay.
coming again. The floor is yours.
All right. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions regarding any of last week's talk? Anything that I presented? Anyone wants to mention anything?
I think we are still few
Besides
numbers
yourself.
right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
All right.
maybe Pickley? Pickley, do you have any question?
Sorry, Brian. No, it's all right. I'm a bit preoccupied at the minute. I'm listening, but yeah, I'm just about to leave you a message, actually.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So last week we ended approximately here. So I'll just recap briefly. We have been discussing natural law in the context of the Bible, and natural law is what we would call the laws of Noah. This is the law before the law of Moses. Now, Noahide law is considered by many people, conspiracy theorists, basically extremely contentious because this is the set of regulations by which the Jews are going to take over the world, suck the blood of your children, and kill everybody who reads the Bible, and all sorts of other fascinating claims. However, the Noahide laws are implicit and explicit in the Ten Commandments. So 6 of the Noahide laws are part of the Ten Commandments, and thus, if, let's say it's 5, let's say 5 of the Noahide laws are word for word in the 10 commandments that are followed by Jews and Christians, then if the Noahide laws are evil, then the 10 commandments would, by that logic, be half evil and half satanic. And so this obviously is a position that would be ridiculous. And this just shows that people making these claims are ignorant of what the laws of Noah are, right? And the question again was, what is the law before the law of Moses? What was the law? Well, what made these patriarchs righteous before the law was explicitly given at Sinai, right? And yeah, so now we've got this. Now I'm just going to read this. I'm not going to play the video. I'll just read this, but at 4 minutes, 5 seconds, right? This is the length of this video. It's very short, called the Anti-Torah Alliance and the 7 Noahide Laws. And it's important that I raise this first to just show the ridiculous lengths that people will go to smear the Bible and to smear what we would consider the foundation of natural law within our civilization. It speaks of the Talmudic Noahide laws. Under the Noahide laws, it is illegal and punishable by death for a non-Jew to keep Torah. That's right, the Noahide laws do not allow so-called Gentiles to practice Torah like at all. They believe that Torah is forbidden for non-Orthodox Jews to participate in, and that also violation should be punishable by death. Anyone can go to YouTube and have a look at this Anti-Torah Alliance. So the video quotes the Melachim u'Milchamot, a 2-part book of Tanakh relating to the history of the Israelites and their kings from David's passing until the Babylonian exile. Right? So now the quotes are not from the Talmud, right? So the quotes are from the Mishnah Torah, a commentary on the Talmud, not from the Talmud itself. So very commonly people will make references to the Talmud says, and then they'll quote a book that's Jewish in origin, but not the Talmud itself. And in many cases, once we get into the Talmud in the future, you'll find that a significant number of quotes from the Talmud that are very common, extremely common on the internet, are totally fabricated. They've literally been fabricated out of thin air. They belong to books that do not exist. They are simply something someone invented and claimed they come from the Torah. But we'll get into that in the future. So the Mishnah Torah is the second law. It is the name used in the Bible to designate the book of Deuteronomy, which is a summary or review of the rest of the Torah. I should have said here kind of. Let me just fix my typo. It's a summary or review of the rest of the Torah. So Maimonides' Mishnah Torah was intended to be a summary of the entire body of Jewish law. Just so we know what the Mishnah Torah is, right? The Mishnah Torah is written by Maimonides. It's a summary of the body of Jewish law, right? Now, this particular book, let's have a look at the Melachim u'Milchamot. I hope I'm saying that correctly and not butchering it. Chapter 12, verse 4. The sages and the prophets did not yearn for the Messianic era in order to have dominion over the entire world, to rule over the Gentiles, to be exalted by the nations. Rather, they desired to be free to involve themselves in Torah and wisdom without any pressure or disturbances, so that they would merit the world to come. Which is very, very interesting in that people make the claim that the rabbis are trying to take over the world. What they're doing is they're simply taking the idea that the rabbis were supposed to, or no, prior to the rabbis, but the Jews, right, the holy men of the Jews were supposed to take these 7 laws that were the precursor to the 10 commandments, and they were supposed to teach this as a moral foundation to the Gentiles, to the non-Jews, right, to the pagans of the world, right? And they now try to extrapolate that or to twist that into the Jews have to take over the world. It is, and as you can see, this is a very interesting passage that has a completely different perspective. And Leviticus 19:17, which is quoted actually quite often within the Talmud and other sources, and we've quoted it multiple times before this, it says, "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him." Okay, now, what does the Talmud say about Gentiles learning Torah? Now, I'm just going to click on this link because I actually want to, let me just select this link. I'm going to bring up my browser. I'm going to go to Safaria. What the heck just happened? Squeeze me a moment. I thought I had copy link. That is much better. This is safaria.org. This is an online Talmud. It is being actively developed, so more and more pages appear every week. And you can see here the translations from the original Greek as well as the Hebrew translations of the Bible. So it's an excellent resource for those who want to know more. Now, they speak here of the 7 Noahide mitzvot. So I'm going to go back to my text, but you can see that I'm drawing this from Sanhedrin 59a. All of these names, all of these books actually mean something. Sanhedrin means something, right? It relates to law. So you can see the Tanakh, the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Midrash, Halacha, the law, legal works. Let's go to the Talmud, and you'll see all these names: Shabbat, Pesachim, Yoma, Eruvim, Berachot, Sukkah. All of these names actually mean something, and these names are actually very, very important. They describe what the book is about. So, for instance, there's a common claim that rabbis are allowed to have sex with 3-year-old girls. Now, we've covered extensively within Islamic law that there is no lower age limit for men to diddle infants, young girls, underage. We've covered that at length. There is no such regulation within the Talmudic law. There is no such regulation. That is simply the twisting the words of a discussion on marriage, right, of marriage law. But that's that. Again, I'll tackle that. I have in the past. We'll get back to that in the future. But there's one section where they actually discuss men having sex with little girls, and it's in a passage discussing rape, which is very interesting that they overlook the name of the passage and that it relates to law and punishment for illegal acts. And they claim that when this discusses crimes, that this provides permission to have sex with little girls. Very, very odd. So, but that we'll get to all of those in the future, right? So now, unfortunately, the Talmud is structured in what's called pilpul. It's a series of questions. You have to question everything, pick everything apart. It's called peppering, right? So very often a statement is made or a question is posed, and this simply sets the tone for now the following debate. A debate could be 50 paragraphs. Now, what happens is that someone with malicious intent will take a few words out of maybe the first paragraph, take a few words out of what could be 10,000 words, and then say, gotcha. See here what these words say. Well, let's have a look. So to repeat what we did last week, a Gentile who studies the Torah robs the Jewish people of it, right? So this is now the statement that is made. However, the statement might actually be devil's advocate. It's posing a situation, and the legal scholars and the students must now debate against this point. They must present evidence to nullify it or to support it, depending on what's being discussed. And it says here, the punishment of a Gentile who studies Torah is like that of one who engages in intercourse with a betrothed young woman, which is execution by stoning. And this is where they stop reading. So let's continue further down. I've cut out a bunch of these different verses, but let's go to this one. The Gemara raises an objection to Rabbi Yohanan's statement from a Baraita. Rabbi Meir would say, from where is it derived that a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest. It is derived from that which is stated, "You shall keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man does, he shall live by them." And this is Leviticus 18:5. The rabbis then state, the phrase, which if priests, Levites, and Israelites do, they shall live by them, is not stated, but rather a man. So you shall therefore keep my statutes, my ordinances, which if a man does, not if Jews do this, but if men do this, which indicates mankind in general. So the interpretation of the rabbis is that this statement refers to mankind in general. And the final statement in this discussion is, "You have therefore learned that even a Gentile who engages in Torah study is considered like a high priest." Now there's another passage after this, and they say that it continues in the same vein, and it says that you are worthy of great respect if you study the Torah. So a Gentile who studies the Torah to learn from it, to learn the morals out of it, this person has earned respect and is considered like a high priest. So understand, many people will state that only Jews are men, and of course they will claim that non-Jews are beasts. Well, but note, not only the Jews are man according to this Torah passage, even Gentiles, non-Jews, are considered man. So this is a common argument that is posed. If you go into Islam, non-Muslims are considered the worst of beasts. That is a non-negotiable. Not a Muslim, you're the worst of beasts. That's the word of Allah. Still, so my question here now to those who've endorsed this view, who have repeated this view, who've been taken in by this view, if you endorse, repeat, and promote propaganda identical to what is in the Quran, in the Sunnah, broadcast by Islamic extremist groups like Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Muslim Brotherhood, Boko Haram, who all have a declared intention to genocide all the Jews, are you a Muslim extremist or a propaganda ally of extremists, though you are unwilling to pull the trigger yourself? I think that's a fair question. If you are repeating Islamic terrorist propaganda, maybe you've got to wonder, are you a terrorist propagandist? Are you an honest person? If you side with Hitler, are you the good guy? So those are questions you need to ask yourself. Any comment before I go on, Harry?
No, it's very clear. Would you like to see if we have any questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
As always.
Guys, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I will allow it. No, nothing in the meantime.
Okay, so to continue with the 10 Commandments and to show how these verses line up with the 10 Commandments, the 7 laws of Noah, okay, there's just a repetition here. This is a prohibition against eating a limb from a living animal. And the Rabbi Ben Gamliel says the blood from a living animal is also prohibited in this verse. So only flesh with its life, which is its blood, you shall not eat. So again, this would mean that for us to eat the flesh of a living animal, to drink blood, this is not considered legal, at least under Jewish law, and this is something God forbids, right? So this is forbidden. Now, he does say this is forbidden to the Jewish people in particular. So similarly, you can say that according to the opinion of Rabbi Hanina, so note it's according to the opinion of a single rabbi, it's forbidden to the Jewish people in particular. So understand, the Talmud doesn't always legislate anything. Sometimes it just discusses things and comes to no conclusion at all. It just puts things out there and just randomly cuts off and moves to the next topic. Okay? So it goes on and it makes clear that it has various moral prohibitions, and this is something that is very, very important to it. Now notice later on it states here, any mitzvah, any law that was first stated with regards to the descendants of Noah and was repeated at Sinai was stated for this group and for that group, i.e. it applies to both Gentiles and Jews. Now so again, understand it's not just for the Jews. Now someone else comes along, a more senior rabbi, a more important rabbi, a more influential rabbi, and he says, hold on, wait, no. We need to understand this in the following way. I object to that statement. We now need to reinterpret that. And he says, no, this applies to both Gentiles and Jews. So Jews are, according to their commission, to teach these moral principles to the whole world. This is not a matter of taking over the world. This is a matter of giving the world a moral foundation that would be considered godly, right? So the Gemara answers, from the fact that the prohibition of idol worship was repeated at Sinai, and we find that God punished Gentiles for it. conclude from it that any mitzvah that was repeated at Sinai was stated for this group and for that group, and not only for the Jewish people. So these are universal rules because God obviously would be, he wouldn't want to change the rules. He wouldn't allow something bad for one group and forbid it for another. There would need to be consistency. There would need to be justice. Right? So now, oddly enough, there is a discussion. I'm not going to get into that particular Talmudic passage right now, but here's an interesting statement here. Jews forgive for such small amounts. I'll read this. Isn't stealing less than the value of one peruta prohibited to a Gentile and permitted to a Jew? Right? And it goes on. There it is, because Gentiles are not apt to grant forgiveness of debts, even of less than the value of one peruta. Therefore, for a Gentile to take even such a minuscule amount is considered robbery. Jews normally forgive such small amounts, which is very, very interesting. So again, we're looking at a contrast of different moral concepts within these two groups, right? So Jews would be like, okay, look, that's a small amount. We are happy to forgive that. So there's context to all of these. And later on, we will get to the discussion of, are Jews allowed to rob you? And of course, the answer is no, because, right, within the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, basically. And yeah. So again, my question at the time when I wrote this was, I said, people died. There was an attack on a synagogue. People got shot. And the group that we were dealing with was incredibly horrible. So my question at the time was, are you lazy? Are you naive? Are you a dupe? Are you easily led? And are you an ally to some crazy Islamic extremists, right? So now, obviously, things have changed over time, right? Jewish perceptions, at least the rabbis' perceptions, have changed, and Trinitarianism is acceptable amongst Gentiles. Clearly, there's still that contention over Christianity splitting off from Judaism, and of course, but that's not part of our discussion for today. Okay, right now, obviously, Christians say that we are not saved by rule keeping, but God requires faith in His Son Jesus, and that's a long theological discussion for another day. Now, the Talmud does add extra laws beyond the 7 listed in the Tosefta, which are attributed to different rabbis, such as the grafting of trees and sorcery, among others. And the Talmud expands the scope of the 7 laws to cover about 100 of the 613 mitzvot, which are binding upon devout Jews. Okay, now, moving to the next topic, if there's no questions. So in 1991, so this is another one of these issues that people brought up, which are supposedly the Jews are going to take over the world. The Jews have taken over the U.S. government. In 1991, both houses of Congress passed a bill signed into law by President George H.W. Bush that declared the laws of Noah to be the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization and the ethical values and principles upon which our great nation was founded. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not murder. Right? I'd say those are fairly moral laws. And if you've been watching Joe Rogan recently, you'll know that, good grief, the Canadian professor, the Canadian psychologist, Harry, Jordan Peterson, was on recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he states that the Bible is not only true, it is more than true. He says the Bible is the precondition for Western truth.
Yes, I saw that.
Because it provides the moral foundation, the perceptual foundation for which we then use to define the truth. So we have logos as opposed to dialectic, or as opposed to heuristic, or as opposed to any of these other competing ideologies of intellect, but which we would consider from a Western standard false intellect, right? So logos and logic would be considered correct as the most superior of the worldviews, and the rest would be considered false worldviews. So he said the Bible is the precondition because the Bible sets the moral stage and it sets our perceptual stage of how we view the world. So this would actually line up with that statement by Jordan Peterson. He would agree with this. And in fact, he has agreed with this. Now notice, let's have a look at the wording to see if this actually is an attempt to take over the world and drink the blood of your little kiddies. So HJ Res 104, 102nd Congress of the USA at the first session. Okay, designating March 26, 1991 as Education Day USA. It's Education Day. Notice it is not every March. It is not repeated annually. It's that March only. Just that March and done. Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded. whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society, where they were known as the 7 Noahide laws. I'm not going to repeat the laws now. Should I repeat the laws again, just to bring people up to speed, or just continue, Harry?
Yes, please. If you can repeat it, would be nice.
Right, so let's go up again and discuss. So these are the 7 laws of Noah. Okay, these are the 7 laws of Noah. These are the 10 commandments next to them. The 7 laws of Noah: do not deny God or commit idolatry. Do not misuse the name of God. In other words, do not lie or do evil in the name of God. Do not murder. Do not engage in sexual immorality or adultery. Do not steal. Do not eat the flesh of a living animal, nor drink its blood, and establish a legal system and government. And this should be a moral legal system and a moral government. Now, contrast that with the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not misuse the name of the Lord thy God in vain, which matches, that's the 3rd commandment, matches the 2nd laws of Noah. Do not deny God or commit idolatry. I am the Lord thy God. You shall have no other gods before me. That's exactly in the 10 commandments, okay? So let's have a look. Thou shalt not murder. Do not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Do not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Do not steal. So 5 of the laws are explicitly within the 10 commandments, right? Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet, right? So now these were received from God according to the Jewish calendar in 2105 BC. And then sometime later, 800 years later, Moses in 1313 BC received the 10 commandments, or the 10 statements. So hopefully that clarifies. These are not, if anyone disagrees with these laws, I'd love to know why. Does anyone stand for murder, sexual immorality, theft? BLM does, I guess. I guess, yeah, that's BLM. Actually, you're right. BLM would stand for this. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Any comment on that?
No, it's very clear again. Thank you.
Okay. So then, okay. So it continues to say, okay, we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. Okay. And this is the start of the 90th year of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, leader of the Worldwide Lubavitch, blah, blah, blah. This is designated as Education Day USA. One day, last century, many years ago, and done. So this is 31 years ago that this occurred, right? And everyone says, oh my God, the Congress has now been taken over by the rabbis and the rabbis are going to kill you. But no, that is not the case, because this was a one-off. And here's the actual bill. You can go online. You can go to congress.gov/bill/102ND for 102nd Congress/House-Joint-Resolution/104/text. Right, for those who are listening and not watching. And notice the committee that's involved for dealing with this, the House, Post Office, and Civil Service. Now, I personally think that the Post Office is very unlikely to raise an army and force everyone at gunpoint to accommodate these laws. What do you think? How dangerous is the Post Office, Harry?
They keep losing my packages, so they're very dangerous. But that's it.
Okay, I take that on board. They lose my mail too. It makes me very upset. In fact, I think I am more dangerous to the post office because I'm going to get annoyed with them losing my mail, delaying my mail. I might go postal. Understand? Think about it. Post office workers have been the victims of people going postal. Post office workers didn't go postal. Think about that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So the humble post office worker has signed this into law, and through the post office, the Jews will take over the world.
That's
right.
The plan. Yeah.
That's the plan. Through the post office. You were looking at the CIA. Meanwhile, it's coming through the post office. In fact, the world is going to be taken over through the mail. Not email. No. We're talking about early 1990s technology now. Thanks, guys. Make sense, Harry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, letters. No one's looking for letters anymore, right?
You have to remember, we can always put anthrax in the letter, so it's mighty dangerous.
You're right. We could mail anthrax. We could yeah, we could send phrases like "learn to code" and then offend everybody, or we could send pictures of trucks. Who knows? I mean, the mail guys. Someone get on this right now. Okay, someone get on this. How's the post office going to take over the world, guys? Okay, because everyone's scanning the emails, but this is analog. This is not digital. The danger is analog. Okay, so guys, there you go. The House Post Office and Civil Service Subcommittee on Census and Population. So, okay, now let's have a look. So this is it. Okay, so policy area is education. Excellent. There you go. Very, very scary. We should all worry about this. Okay. So the goal of Education and Sharing Day is to put greater emphasis on the promotion of fundamental human rights and obligations of justice and morality, which are the basis of any human society, if it is to be truly human and not turn into a jungle. Okay. So you got President Ronald Reagan endorsed this in 82. There was George H.W. Bush in 89. Okay. And our great nation takes pride in its dedication to the principles of justice, equality, and truth. And this is just wonderful words. Bill Clinton, 1995, writing nice words about this particular Rabbi Schneerson again. Okay, it taught the lessons of honesty, tolerance, and good citizenship, as well as language, math, and science. So people have nice things to say about the good rabbi. Okay, about his commitment to kindness. Okay. And about wanting society to make the new commitment to kindness. Barack Obama even gave him a floor. Okay, he sought to empower young people and inspire individuals of all ages. Donald Trump also recognized him, oddly enough. Education and Sharing Day recognizes the remarkable efforts of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson to use values-based education to drive our nation's children towards the American dream. Right. So, okay, you guys make of that what you will. Okay, so. So I'll pause on that now. The House Post Office. So all of this stuff is available online. You can actually go and search this and look it up, and you can see how nasty it is, right? But now, interestingly, forms of congressional action. So a bill can be permanent or temporary. Okay, bills are presented to the president for action when approved in identical form by the House of Reps and the Senate. Joint resolutions become law in the same manner as bills. Okay, there's just some boring technical stuff here. But now let's look at some other stuff that I put forward. Let's look at this Muslim guy called Cory Booker, talking about Ramadan. Okay, let's see. This resolution recognizing the history and contributions of Muslims of the United States. Sponsor, Senator Cory Booker. Co-sponsors, 6 of them, not named right now. So I'm not sure what the history and contributions of Muslims of the United States were, but no one seems to have a problem with this going forward, right? Let's see. Recognizing Islam as one of the great religions of the world. I haven't heard any outcry about this one. Have you heard any outcry? Pardon me, I'm just hiccuping. Have you heard an outcry about this particular bill?
No, never.
Is there a reason that America needs to recognize Islam as one of the great demolishers of buildings in the world or something?
Look, and it's even how do you say it? Committee is a foreign affairs. It's no longer the
Foreign
dangerous
affairs.
post
It's
office.
not the post office.
Yes.
No, it's not the post office. If you go up here, these guys are the Senate Judiciary Committee, to the Committee on the Judiciary, not the post office. Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
Agreed to in Senate. Agreed to in the House. Yeah. So no one seems to have a problem with these. These, I don't know if they've passed or not, but whatever. But these people want to ultimately make Sharia the law and make beheadings under Islam legal and child diddling legal. This is where they're going with this. So and this is the Committee on Foreign Affairs is probably slightly more important than the post office. So,
but what are the contributions Islam had in the U.S. according to this bill?
I don't know. We'd have to have a look. Honestly, I'd have to have a look. I'd have to go online and actually go and find it.
It would probably be very short, maybe like one line. With one word saying nothing.
I don't know. We would have to, changing the landscape, changing the skyline of New York. I don't know. Let's have a look. Introduced text. Let's have a look here. Recognizing Islam as one of the great religions of the world, whereas Islam means submission to the will of God and peace, which is a lie on the face of it. Islam means submission. It means submission to the Sharia, to the will of Allah is the Sharia. Whereas the primary scripture of Islam is the Quran. Like, who cares? Like, why is this important? Its roots go back further. Scholars typically date the revelation of, although its roots go back further, all the way to the Gnostics, yes. It's the second largest religion. It's the fastest growing. It's estimated. They want to make this official. Islam contains the essential principles of all earlier religions, like child diddling. Yeah, that was definitely Babylonian and Canaanite, for sure. Islam is strongly monotheistic. It's a complete system of strong moral convictions. Oh, yeah, we've been through those. So they don't just want to recognize the precursor to the Ten Commandments. They want Islam put forward as the perfect religion.
It's a promotion
Resolved.
deal.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You can't talk about the Ten Commandments, but you can put forward Islam and no one says a word about it. So just so you know, it's called hypocrisy. I think that's the word for it. So, okay, any comments there? Anyone?
Questions, guys? Anyone? No, nothing.
Okay, right. So now something I want to touch on: government, courts of justice, a gift of the Spirit. Now, one of the major of the seven laws of Noah, what people do object to is that the seventh law is that mankind is meant to establish courts of justice. And people say, well, the Jews are going to establish courts. They're going to kill and behead everybody that pisses them off. Right? They'll make these claims. Ridiculous. So let's have a look at what the New Testament has to say and what the Bible has to say about courts and justice and government. So, wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaking by the Spirit of God calleth Jesus accursed, and that no man can say that Jesus is the Lord but by the Holy Ghost. Just keep that in mind, okay? No man speaking by the Spirit of God calls Jesus accursed. Islam, of course, has no love for Jesus. They have Isa, who is a Gnostic Jesus, and not these other. It embraces an entirely Gnostic view of Jesus as opposed to the historical Jesus from the New Testament. Right. Now, 1 Corinthians, now, of course, the New Testament is the book of the apostles who write about Jesus, the message of Jesus, and they exegete the morals of Jesus, the story, and the lessons he came to teach. So 1 Corinthians tells us, and God hath set some in the church, first apostles, and secondarily prophets, thirdly teachers, and then miracles, gifts of healings, and governments. Right? Different translations will translate that differently, but 1 Corinthians says that God has set in the church governments. So governments are important for mankind. For biblical Christian believing men and women, government is something that we must also form. We must have good governance. Romans 13 tells us, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Now, of course, we would need moral rulers who rule according to laws and precepts that we believe in, right, that are moral. But notice, those who despise and those who oppose government, right, they might be people who are evil, who do not want to be opposed by a moral government. So rulers are not a terror to good works. Rulers should not oppose good works, and people who want to do good works should not feel that they need to overthrow the government to get their work done. Those are people who are, according to this, evil. Romans 13:1, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Okay, so of course, people can make choices. They can do the wrong thing. And you mentioned something last week about, what about Satan? Well, don't forget, the Satan who was originally, he was not created evil. He made a choice. Understand? He was not created evil. He made a choice. Unfortunately, when you make something that has free will, it can make the wrong choices, make its own choices, and so on. Now, 13:3, for rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. So do good with your government. So, for he is the minister of God to thee for good. Romans 13:4. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. remember we spoke last week of, I presented the words of Samuel Adams, which said that the American Constitution is for a religious people, for a moral people, and that it's not suitable. The American Constitution is not suitable to any other kind of people. So here we have discussion with the Apostle Paul talking about the ministers of the law, and they are ministers of God to thee for good, right? Assuming, of course, that these people will follow moral precepts. If you do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So even justice, even within the New Testament, they admit that justice means that you will use force. So even the New Testament acknowledges the use of force as part and parcel of administering the law and of being the government. So Gentiles are to establish justice, courts of the law. Okay, naysayers would, by what I see here, are seeking to avoid justice. They're seeking to corrupt justice. Any comment?
No.
So let's go. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to know, is there any chance that Romans 13 was corrupted by the Roman Empire or something like that, so that people, especially the Christians, will accept the power of the government?
Yeah, but the Christians didn't exactly knuckle under to the government, don't forget. And there are too many copies. I mean, there's something like these days, there's like 30,000 copies of the Bible, as well as numerous hundreds of commentaries on the Bible from which the Bible can be reconstructed. So we know that from copy to copy, from the very earliest to the very latest, that there's a continuous thread so that we can reconstruct the entire Bible. I mean, there's no other book in all of literature which has this much attestation and historical copies. So, for instance, we will accept Homer's Iliad as authentic because there's like 5 or 6 surviving copies. The Bible's got like 30,000 copies to compare against, so therefore it should be authentic from its earliest until its latest.
I understand. Thank you.
All right. Let's look at Deuteronomy 25:1. If there be controversy between men and they come unto judgment, the judges may judge them. Then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. So clearly the concept of justice, the concept of rule of law and courts of law is in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And Deuteronomy speaks of this. If any case arises requiring decision between one kind of homicide and another, one kind of legal right and another, one kind of assault and another, any case within your towns which is too difficult for you, then you shall rise and go to the place which your Lord will choose, coming to the priests and to the judge who is in office, and you shall consult them. So the concept of judgment goes back, and the concept of judgment resting within men. So having courts of law, this is consistent with the 7th law of Noah, and this carries through from the Old Testament through to the New Testament. Let's have a look, 2 Peter 10. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. So the idea of a moral government is considered good. It's a dignity, right? So that man can live with dignity under good governance, right? And that there will be justice. He knows he can find justice. But them that walk in the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and they despise government. So those who despise government, good government, this tells us there's a problem, that we should want good government. And those who want to overthrow government, this could well be because they want to live according to their own lights and do mischief. They want to violate the law for their own benefit. So these are implications that we would have from this. So this is from the New Testament. Let's look at 1 Peter 2:13. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, right? So again, now, because Christianity does not legislate civil law, within the Jewish context, there was the civil law, the moral law, and the ceremonial law. Christianity legislates only moral law. It does not legislate civil law. So obviously the hope is that you'd have a good Christian or someone who abides by the moral law of God, who would then utilize that to enact moral laws and carry them out in a moral manner, right? So because laws tend to legislate morals. I mean, laws do legislate morals. Sharia law legislates the morals of Muhammad and Allah. Christian law should then legislate the morals of the Bible, right? As going back to what Jordan Peterson was saying. So we have laws that are based on our moral worldview, right? So remember, people always state that there's this very common saying that that politics is downstream from culture. People always say politics is downstream from culture. So culture influences politics. They always leave out Andrew Breitbart's first part. I believe he said the first part, which is that culture is downstream from religion. So religion creates culture, culture creates the politics, right? Everyone always leaves out the first part, the religion. So your religion creates your culture. Your culture then creates the legal and moral, the legal system that governs that country. Any comment, Harry?
I agree with that. Even though I heard a lecture by Ayn Rand before, and she was like saying that basically the tree is like, first you have to have the right metaphysics, and then the question of how do you know what you know, and then basically it will lead to proper moral behavior, which will eventually lead to the proper politics, and eventually even proper aesthetics. So when you corrupt the metaphysics perception of things, for example, this fantasy, like the things that you're teaching us about Gnosticism, then eventually everything that will follow will be corrupted.
True. And yeah, if you look at the aesthetics, I mean, like putting lipstick on a guy now he's a female, right? I mean, you know, I mean, these are guys that tell us that we can't. That the only thing that can cure a certain disease of unknown origin, right, is the vaccine, right? Whereas we cannot look at any other kinds of medicine. There's nothing else ever possibly that can be discussed. Only vaccines that you have to buy at $40 a dose, right? And take them every 6 months, which is interesting. And those same people who tell you to trust the science will also tell you that men can become pregnant. So yeah, want us to question this. I personally, I'm not buying that. So, right, 1 Peter 2:14, or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of them that do well. So you are meant to punish evildoers. There must be justice, right? Justice in your gates. You shall appoint, Deuteronomy, you shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates, which the Lord gives you according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment. Now, what is interesting within the rabbinic law, or at least within their principles, they are to teach these basic fundamental laws of justice to non-Jews. And those Jews have to then create their own legal system, their own independent legal systems, hopefully derived on the basis of these laws, right? Of these moral laws. But they're not to create the laws for them. Okay? So Romans 8:4, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. So again, a law that is based upon your spirit, the moral law of God, right? Now, of course, don't forget that Christianity now has the moral law, right? We don't have civil law, we don't legislate law. Islam has legislative law, civil law, called the Sharia, right? And of course, Exodus 22:28 says, thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. So hopefully you have a good ruler that you will respect and follow. You should not curse the ruler of your people. I would assume that the context would be within a good ruler. Okay, but of course, those who want to undermine the government, those who want to impose their own particular nasty ideologies, would of course want people to do this. They would want to disrupt the system that we have. So look, this is just to say that the New Testament, the Old Testament, do speak of having courts of justice and having government. So the idea that the seventh law of Noah is some kind of evil, toxic idea, no, this is endorsed within the New Testament as well. Okay,
Lloyd.
Yep.
How do you settle that when, for example, you're reading in Samuel 1, chapter 8, when the people of Israel wanted to have a king, and Samuel was warning against them, and God even said, if I remember properly, in verse 13, that they will cry out and God will not hear. It seems like there is a warning against king and rulers. And here you are showing verses that are actually making us respect that authority. So how
Well,
do
you
we
should
set up?
respect legal authority. Look, there's always going to be context in terms of how to understand it. I mean, I'm not a theologian, so I didn't spend any time looking at 1 Samuel, but
Okay.
the point of a king was that the king would often rule on his own decrees. So perhaps this was a form of government that had now been set aside for this group, right? Because remember, they spoke of the Levites. You have to take it to, okay, well, short version. So within the Old Testament, if you cannot come to an agreement with your neighbor, go to the priests and go to the judge. They must work in concert so that the priest informs the judge and the judge relies on the priests, right? So that the law is molded by the moral law of the tribe, right? Whereas within the New Testament, if there's a dispute within the church, the apostles said, if you cannot find agreement, take it to the church, go to the leaders, go to the elders. You go to the church, you present it to the church, and you listen to the ruling of the elders, and you abide by that. Okay, assuming that your elders, of course, are trusted, that your elders are moral and ethical people who are doing the best that they can. So yeah, I mean, there is that we would go to a source of authority. Man is by nature hierarchical, right? If you have someone and you have a group that is very hierarchical and they form an army, and then you've got this group of disconnected individuals who are all like uber individualistic, right? They are divided as much as they're special because they're all super individuals. They're all divided, and they can easily be overrun by a very well organized group who are the Borg. So there's a risk there. Hopefully that clarifies. Hopefully that provides some kind of answer.
It does. Yeah.
Okay, so notice the last one. Okay, it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. So this legal system, this moral system, this system of justice needs to show that it is good justice, that it is good law, that you can see this has been carried out to the glory of God, not to defile the name of God, right? That it shows truth in action, and it doesn't show corruption in action. So this is the general context of this. So that's John 3:19. Okay, so people love the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. Those who do wicked things hate the light and does not come to light, lest his works should be exposed. Whoever does what is true comes to the light. So within context, and this is the judgment. See, this is the judgment. So bad things need to be judged. They need to be exposed. And of course, there needs to be justice, because God is not just the guy who gives you bicycles at Christmas. He's also a God of justice. So we need to exemplify, at least the context would be exemplify the justice of God, not just, the fact that he gives you a bicycle every Christmas, right? Hold on. Okay, so yeah, any comment? Otherwise, this should be winding down at this point.
Yeah.
So
How do we pass?
yeah.
How do we pass judgment on the governments like we have now? Like, does the
I
Bible
mean,
say
don't
anything
forget that
about?
within the American Constitution, which is supposed to be for a moral, righteous people, there are certain fundamental, inviolable laws, right? And there's also what is reasonable, what is right, what people consider right within their moral sense. And if the government, it says within if it's not in the Bill of Rights, if not in the Constitution, it's in the Bill of Rights. And of course, I'm not an American constitutionalist. I mean, in that I don't know their Constitution, Bill of Rights as well as. Then again, most Americans don't either. But if the government is not fit for purpose, they have the right to overthrow that government, which is one of the reasons they have the right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah. The Second Amendment. Yes. Okay.
Right. So the obligation for a Gentile society to set up a judicial system. Yep.
Lloyd, one moment. Dave wanted to come in. Allow me,
Sure.
please.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dave.
I think what you're saying is incredibly important, Lloyd, especially in terms of the notions of statutes and judgments. The legislated book, the legal system within the United Kingdom and so much across the world has begun to explode. It began in 1986. And so I think this is part of how it is. We've come to be under a government of occupation, one rather than one whose duties are, fulfillable. Because it's getting very dangerous.
Yeah, it's micromanaging. It's got a communist bent to it. It's got a totalitarian collectivist bent to it. And it's gone the wrong way. But as our culture has shifted away from its moral roots, I mean, Jordan Peterson speaks at length about this in his most recent discussion with Joe Rogan about this. As we move away from the moral underpinnings that made us, from the decision making, based on our moral roots in the Bible, we have now started to again move back towards pagan ideas, pagan methods of doing things, use of force. And, there's no longer trust, where we would simply provide a principle and people would generally work within that framework. We're moving to becoming low trust societies. Governments no longer trust their people or fear their people. Go on, Dave.
No, I mean, you're making the point, and part of how we've got here appears to always involve these merchants of sin, those that start to inform the child, the infant, and the interventions now as well. When you plot the changes in terms of the control of sciences and the plight of, us in so many times, over and over again, and what we're seeing today is like a crescendo. It's like all out.
Yeah, no, look, things are changing, and I think we've forgotten our roots. We've forgotten the moral foundations that we should be standing upon and living from, right? And oddly, if you look at the rise of religion today, besides like Islam, but people are moving because Christianity is not asserting itself, because Christianity has been sort of shut out of the public square and demonized. People are moving back towards paganism. Paganism is coming back, and go back in history, paganism didn't work out that well for people. But this is what you get. You get tribalism, you get paganism. Whereas Christianity was what changed the landscape within Europe and established the most successful civilization ever. And now Christianity has been undermined to the degree that people have lost that cultural confidence, right? And as I said, the culture is downstream from the religion. Islam is like that because of its religion. That's why the culture is so messed up. The communists were like they were from their quote-unquote religion, right? The Nazis had their own half-baked religion, right? They actually had certain religious views based on numerous things, and from worship of the Odin and all sorts of other weird things. I've seen mentions of the blood religion. They were influenced by Islam. They had lots of involvement with the Sufis. So yeah, the religion influenced the culture, which influenced their politics. And the same with the communists. They're supposed atheistic religion, but there you go, right? The lack of religion, this, as Jordan Peterson would call it, a pimple on the butt of religion, I think he called it, ideology. So, yeah.
He spoke about the destruction of the categories at the foundation of our culture, and the attack on religion, the attack on Christianity. He mentioned that in the last conversation he had with Joe Rogan. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So we need to, so I mean, if you had a strong moral sense, you'd say no to things. You would never allow it. And hopefully your leaders would be the same, but they've been bought out and so on. Yeah, so we need to go back to establish what is our moral foundation. It's not that the moral foundations are wrong. They were right for us. They worked for us. No humans are perfect. No human system is perfect, but we had the best system. We still have the best system, but it's now being undermined, and we've been tolerant of the rot, right? So this will end very shortly. So this is, from, I don't have the book, I've got the link, but this is about the establishment of laws and courts. It's a discussion from a scholar on this particular issue, and it's called The Obligation for a Gentile Society to Set Up a Judicial System. So just to end this completely, so Gentiles are obligated. Now this is based on what is derived from the Bible through the Talmud and so on. Gentiles are therefore obligated within their commandment of dinim to make righteous and beneficial laws that are effective for all of the country in all matters between people, such as laws in the areas of theft, requiring a thief to reimburse his victim, cheating, payment of a hired worker, holding back a worker's pay. These are all, we went through all of these earlier. These were in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. You saw these laws. Obligations regarding watchmen, rape or seduction, monetary damages, For example, by a person damaging someone financially, or by a person allowing his property to damage someone bodily or financially. Bodily injury, lending and borrowing, other business transactions, and requirements for the courts to administer justice according to these laws. Now understand, you've got a moral basis here that values people, that says that justice, right, that you can be hurt and you must be given justice. There must be some kind of calming of your concerns through justice. You must see justice to be done. You must have someone you can appeal to for justice, because there is a moral law, right? And the arbiter of this moral law is God, right? And therefore they're saying that you as a human being have individual value. You have the right to be treated justly and to see justice done, and justice must be meted out to people who are guilty. They must be punished. Now, if you go to, let's say, atheism, which has no moral center, right, because it's got no absolute moral arbiter like God, you have a very different view of the value of the human being. Look at the Chinese who've murdered, 65 million of their own people. They have a completely different set of morals. Islam has a different set of morals. It's a completely different set of moral laws. But here you see that people need to be compensated fairly. This is a biblical thing. You may not steal their wages. Holding back their wages is theft. That law, if you look at your human resources laws, right, your labor laws, those are derived directly from the Jewish law, as we've covered within the Bible. Monetary damages, all of these, damaging someone bodily or financially, these laws derive directly from the Jewish law, right? They derive directly from the Bible, from the Jewish law, and from the laws ultimately that began with the laws of Noah through to the Ten Commandments, and then development over time until we have our modern legal system. Every single thing mentioned here derives directly from the Bible. It didn't come from Karl Marx, right? It didn't come from who's the guy with who's the fool that evolution. Who was the guy that the theory of evolution?
Darwin.
Darwin, yeah. I need to talk about Darwin and Hitler at some point. I need to talk about Darwin and his fantastic influence on the Nazis. We need to go there one day. That's going to be fascinating, because we've spoken about Hitler and the Muslims. We need to speak about Hitler and Darwin. Oh man, that's a joy. That's a real joy.
Okay,
yeah.
We will be delighted.
Oh boy, that's a lot of fun to talk about Hitler and Darwin. How Darwin helped Hitler see the light. Yep. So, sorry, but my apologies. I'm not really trying to offend atheists, but you guys need to find orthodoxy, okay? Get some orthodoxy, because I've seen too much. We're atheists. We don't believe anything. Therefore, we didn't do nothing. Atheists are the original didn't do nothings, okay? The rise of the didn't do. The atheist didn't do nothing. Yeah, so we need to we'll look at the godfather of, good grief, but that's a story for another day. As we know, I generally tend to offend at least one person every show. So, okay. Right. So now notice laws on lending, borrowing, business transactions, requirements of the courts to administer justice according to these laws. All of this biblical. In part 7 of Sheva Mitzvot Hashem, of the prohibition of theft, the main laws of the Noahide Code already outlined regarding theft, cheating, holding back a worker's pay, the obligations and pay of watchmen, rapists or seducers, monetary damages, and bodily harm. The people who write these laws, which Gentiles may establish for themselves. So basically the job of the Jews at the time, according to the biblical sort of code, was they would spread these laws of God, right, out into the world to the pagans. And they would say, follow these, at least at minimum, take these few laws, incorporate them into your moral code, and thus into your legal system and your system of government, right? So that at least you abide by these few laws, which you can interpret as natural law, right? So the people who write these laws, which Gentiles may establish for themselves, and the judges who rule on the applications of these laws must establish them according to their knowledge of the true needs of the country's population and the establishment of a moral society. So they are supposed to pass these laws on and let that country make its own laws, give them independence, but encourage them to take these laws. We think they're good. They do not necessarily need to follow the Torah's monetary laws for Jews, oddly enough. Rather, they may rule similarly or differently based on their view of what is necessary for the specific society of their country. The laws must conform, obviously, to logical and moral standards, and they must not be like the evil and cruel laws of the biblical city of Sodom, on account of which God utterly destroyed the metropolis. So I can end this here. I mean, this ends my discussion of the laws of Noah. But hopefully, does that clarify and does that give you now an idea where I was leading with this in terms of how these are moral laws, but they are meant to be applied to our system of law and our system of government.
As usual, the presentation is superb. Everything is very clear and useful. I'm going to make a great use of that presentation, especially with the ethno-nationalist friends we have.
Yeah. So you have the link to this, right? Do you have the link to this? Because I've given you the link in the past. This is called the Laws of Noah. My database is online. Everything you've seen here is available online. I give it away to anyone. They can welcome to download it, use it, edit it, read it, print it out, wipe their bums with it, whatever you want to do. It's all available to you. So all my sources, all my links, you can click all the links. You can do this, you can do that. You can go find the books, whatnot. So yeah, everything you can see links. These are all clickable links. So all my sources, everything I provide. So let me just go back here. Come on. Well, it is a link. If I click on it, if I click on it, it's gonna show up like right there. You can see 2 Peter 2:10. Yeah. So everything is clickable. Everything works. So all my sources, everything I've spoken of, it's all clickable, all clickable. Everything is there. Nothing's made up. So you're welcome to view this for yourself, research for yourself.
Maybe you can send me in a private message a link again to this database, just so I can have it more handy.
Yes, I shall do so in a moment.
Thank you.
Give me a moment to just get this information up.
Guys, do
so
you
this
have
is
any
public.
questions? Sorry. If you have any questions or comments, now would be a good time. People are very quiet tonight.
There was one question that I had earlier. You spoke of, within the tradition, something about the grafting of trees. Can you remember?
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I didn't really dig into that, but apparently it's one of the laws that the rabbis speak against, because I'm not sure if it's biblically derived, but you're not supposed to graft one species of tree onto another. And I don't know if this is something that is relevant only to the Jews, or, this is... Yeah. Let's have a look. Let's go into Safari. Sorry?
It could also though indicate that it's forbidden to manipulate genetic modification.
Okay, so Sanhedrin 56b verse 3. Okay, so yeah, let's have a look here. Now remember, the fact that it's mentioned in the Talmud doesn't mean that it is a law. It just means it was discussed. Okay? So the descendants of Noah were also commanded. Oh, sorry. Let me share my screen because I'm not sharing. So let me do that for a moment. So I went to safaria.org and I typed in grafting of trees. You can see up top here. I typed in grafting of trees. I pressed enter, and I'm just going to the very first reference, Sanhedrin 56b verse 3. And it says here, Rabbi Elazar says the descendants of Noah were also commanded concerning the prohibition of diverse kinds. Nevertheless, it is permitted for the descendants of Noah to wear diverse kinds of wool and linen and to sow diverse kinds of seeds together. And they are prohibited only with regard to breeding diverse species of animals and grafting diverse species of trees. Now, this doesn't have to be a ruling. This could be a question. This could be someone playing devil's advocate and saying, okay, we think that this biblical passage says the following, and then a debate ensues and it goes on for 20 pages. That's common in the Talmud. Does that help? But see, I think this is generally an opinion. I don't know if it's a ruling, but it looks like it's a valid opinion. It definitely looks like it's an opinion that they hold. but it doesn't necessarily have to be a law. It's not civil law. Does that help, Dave?
Yeah, it's yeah, it could be read for me almost two ways. Because grafting of trees, strictly speaking, when you're grafting with trees, you can't graft across different species. You can't graft an apple onto a plum.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole, yeah.
I was going to say, but genetic modification, you can take a genetic material from a strawberry or from a rabbit and put it into a strawberry.
And they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that bothers me. Yeah. I'm trying to find the references where this thing is drawing from. So the Tanakh, that's Genesis, but that's nothing. Let's have a look at the Talmud. Talmud Baitza. Grafting. We'd have to find something that says bake and cook on the holiday. I don't know if that's relevant. Yeah, I mean, look, well, one could read something into it. There must be some kind of formal writing on it. I'm sure we can find something if we look. This is still untranslated, so I mean, this is a year's worth of work. They're still busy translating a lot of this stuff. A lot of it has been translated. You can see more and more all the time. Let's have a look here. Jewish thought. Okay, the Minshat Kanawat. Harry, you're the point man on this one. Just read the first couple of lines and see if it says anything relevant.
Oh man, where to begin?
Oh my. just.
Maybe Diana can help me.
Oh boy! Don't tell me you don't do. What kind of an Israeli are you even? You don't even read your own home language.
No, I can. Where do you want me to start?
I don't know. Is this relevant to grafting of trees or anything? Does it say anything that's relevant to that topic?
1 second, let me read.
Anything relevant?
No, I don't see anything about trees.
Okay, I'll skip. I'll skip down a little bit. See anything additional? No, nothing, right?
No, I'm sorry. No.
Yeah. So Dave, I mean, we'd have to actually go and have a look and see what was written about it for reference. But I mean, yeah, I guess one could interpret it that way. I mean, it's probably not impossible. I mean, it's not like Monsanto is exactly a bastion of morality, right?
Yeah, these transhumanists aren't either.
Yeah, so fair enough. I mean, fair point. I cannot find a reason to go against what you're saying. I mean, in order to object to it. So yeah, I mean, I would say yeah, they would take you can extend this, extrapolate this, and exegete it into that. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I can't say why not.
And if I was going to put my full-blown conspiracy hat on, I would suggest maybe there's another religion that we don't ever talk about, which has been operating through powers of corridor for a long time.
Are you talking about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster? Probably not, right? So
I'm talking about the ones that want to effectively digitize us.
Okay, well, the Germans, you mean? The Germans, we'll just call it. Sorry, no offense to all Germans. Okay, guys, so yeah, nothing there that I can find here. So this is the reference here, but let's have a look and see what else let's have a look and see what else they would tell us with regards to grafting of trees. So let's have a look here again. That's Sanhedrin. One may not graft a tree onto a different species of tree, nor a herb onto a herb of a different species, nor a tree onto a herb. Okay, this is more specific. So let's actually go there. Let's have a look here. This is Sefaria.org, okay? Just SEFARIA.org. Sefaria.org. And here's the ruling. Well, assuming it's a ruling. One may not graft a tree onto a different species of tree, nor a herb onto a herb of a different species, nor a tree onto a herb, nor a herb onto a tree. Rabbi Yehuda permits the grafting of herbs onto trees. So one may not plant herbs in the trunk of a sycamore fig. So I guess possibly they were saying, don't mess with the creation of God. I mean, who knows? It could just be a religious prohibition. Is it necessarily a scientific prohibition? Is it necessarily some kind of moral law? Or are they just saying, well, look, I mean, we just think it's religiously not good that you muck about with God's creation. I don't know. But they might have a reason for it, But it looks like this is quite extensive. So it looks like there's a bit of discussion going on here. So now let's go back. Rambam. So the Rambam. Okay. As well as breeding mixed kinds of cattle or grafting together different species of trees, my laws refer to civil statutes and the prohibitions against. Okay, so that's something by Maimonides. And it constitutes prohibition against grafting diverse kinds of trees. So you're welcome to go through this and have a look and see if you find anything, Dave. It is permitted to sow vegetable seeds and tree seeds together, and it's permissible to mix seeds of trees and sow them. Okay, here's another thing. The issue with the Talmud is that it just starts and it doesn't stop. It's like every possible permutation, combination it just goes wild. It's like, well, what if, what if your shirt is blue? Is that legal? Yeah, blue shirts are legal. What if it's a blue shirt, but the left sleeve is 1 centimeter shorter than the right sleeve? Well, that would still be legal. It's not great. It's not aesthetic, but it's still legal. Yeah, well, what if the left sleeve is pink and 3 centimeters shorter than the right sleeve, which is purple, but the rest of the shirt is blue? Okay, well, that's a bit of a statement, but purple is the color of it just. And then it'll go, okay, what if the one sleeve is short sleeve and the other sleeve is long sleeve and it's made of wool and the other one is made of dog poo? And excuse my French here, but understand that whatever crazy combinations, the Talmud will start to discuss this and go on for 100 pages talking about the most inane, obtuse stuff. And you just like your head wants to explode. Am I wrong about that, Harry?
To be honest, I'm a bad Jew. I don't know enough about Judaism. So
that's terrible. Okay, let's just say that the Talmud goes on and on about the most inane nonsense sometimes, and it's like seriously, didn't these guys have anything better to do? Didn't they have Netflix? Go watch a movie, guys. I mean, that would be seriously. Go watch CNN. That would be more educational than this garbage, because sometimes they'll go on about the most inane topics for page after page. It's just crazy. Some of the stuff you read in the Talmud, you're like, good grief, these guys need a life. So, yeah. But anyway, and then there's some good stuff, and then there's some crazy stuff, and then there's just some utterly boring nonsense. So it's a mixture. So, Dave, anything else? No, there's a lot of references to grafting of trees. So basically, look, I'm done here for tonight, if that's okay. I've covered that topic, and I wanted to speak about governments and so on. So hopefully that clarifies. Anything further? Because I'm kind of just waffling at this point.
No, I think you're done for the night. Thank you for this presentation about the Noahide laws. It's very important, very useful,
You're welcome.
Especially for the natural law group. I'm sure that people can make great use of that. And I think you made your point very clearly about the governments as well. I'm going to tackle my friends with the information you presented.
Yeah, and guys, check those letters, okay? Look at the post office with a bit of a jaundiced eye, because the end of the world is coming to the post office, as you know.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you very much for coming.
Is this the apocalypse or is this the post office? It's hard to tell.
Jokes.
Sorry?
Hey, coming out with second-class jokes.
Well, look, some people take that very seriously. It's like, guys, is this the apocalypse or is this the post office? Am I going crazy or is this the post office? These are questions. These are very important existential questions. So, yeah, guys, any last-minute comments? Otherwise, I'm out of here.
Yeah, guys, questions, please, or any comments?
Brilliant information again and referenced again. It's always great listening to you, mate.
No, welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thanks, guys. So hopefully that was interesting and clarified everything. And so we'll pick another topic next week, probably dive into the Talmud, talk about our first lesson on the Talmud and what exactly it is and what, So we'll go into some depth some technical depth, and then at some point I'll put together something on Darwin and the Nazis. That'll be entertaining.
You don't
I
have
definitely
anything
do.
ready on Darwin and
No,
Newton?
I've been meaning to do it for a long time. For the last 2 years or 3 years, 4 years probably, I've been meaning to do this, and I never did. But I mean, it wouldn't take me that long. But yeah.
Any progress on the Martin Luther subject? Maybe.
You know what? The thing is, I can present what I have, but the problem is that I really want to spend more time. The thing is, I'll be presenting what someone else said, and I haven't had a chance to verify everything. I'm so busy with other things, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, the more I read about
I'm
Martin Luther,
extremely
the more
interested about Martin Luther. That's
yeah,
a
the
huge
more I
topic.
read about Martin Luther, the more I think this was an evil, wicked, vile man who unfortunately caused huge damage and destruction, and caused far more problems than people realize. Just yeah. And if you think he was German, and ultimately Germany's involvement in 2 major world wars, and what kind of moral damage he did to Germany, what kind of damage he did to the society of Germany, you have to wonder.
Well,
And in fact, there are PhD papers. There's one that I've referenced that I've read, that where they speak of a straight line from Luther to Hitler, because Hitler was in love with Martin Luther's ideas, and they were anything but Christian. I mean, so yeah.
Okay, we will be waiting anxiously for that presentation.
Yeah, actually, you know, I can probably talk about that on from Hitler to Martin, or from Martin Luther to Hitler. That's probably something I can to prepare something on. So I'll tell you what, I can actually start with that.
Maybe
it's going to take me time, and these things take time. I have other things prepared, you know, Talmud wise. So I need time to prepare research, and you know, I wish I'll speak to my staff, and I'll see if they can get anything done soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for coming, as usual. Always very
Cheers,
helpful.
guys. Good night.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.